You came. That was the first thing Grant Holloway said to me in 10 years. Not hello. Not wow, it's been a while. Just 2 words, spoken like he'd been standing near the hotel entrance waiting to see whether I would actually walk through it. I stopped so suddenly the guy behind me nearly ran into my back. Grant stood beside the reunion check-in table in a dark button-down with the sleeves rolled to his forearms, holding 2 plastic cups. He looked older than he did in my yearbook. Broader. Calmer. Still unfairly good-looking in that effortless way I used to hate. Mostly because, back in high school, he could walk past me in the hallway without so much as blinking. Yeah, I managed. Apparently I enjoy making bad decisions. One corner of his mouth lifted, but his eyes stayed fixed on mine. That was new. Grant used to look anywhere but directly at me. Toward his teammates. At his phone. Over my shoulder like someone more important might appear behind me. I tightened my grip on the strap of my overnight bag. My chest already felt too tight, and I hadn't even made it past registration. Long drive. He stepped closer, lowering his voice as another group entered behind me. From Chicago? About 6 hours. You came straight here? The hotel is here. Right. A small pause settled between us. Not comfortable. Not exactly awkward either. Just heavy with too many things neither of us had said when we were 17. Grant glanced down at the cups in his hands, then offered one to me. I got this for you. I stared at it. Ginger ale. No ice. My stomach did something stupid. Why? His eyebrows pulled together slightly. Because you don't drink. I drink. You hated beer in high school. That was 10 years ago. You still make that face when you smell it. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I looked at him more carefully. You remember that? Grant's expression changed for half a second. Softer. Maybe nervous. Then someone at the check-in desk called his name, and the moment snapped. Grant, we need you for the class photo setup. A woman wearing a reunion committee badge waved him over. Of course he was helping organize things. Of course he still belonged here. Grant lifted one hand to acknowledge her, but he didn't leave immediately. I wasn't sure you'd come, he murmured. Neither was I. I'm glad you did. My pulse kicked hard against my throat. It meant nothing. People said things like that at reunions. Everyone pretended they had missed everyone. That was the whole point. Grant was probably being polite. Maybe he felt guilty for barely speaking to me back then. Maybe he didn't even remember it the way I did. I reached for the cup, intending to take it quickly. Our fingers touched around the plastic rim. Just a brief brush. It should have been nothing. But Grant didn't pull away right away. Neither did I. For 1 second, the lobby noise seemed to drop out. His eyes lowered to our hands, then rose slowly back to my face. My chest tightened. I let go first. Thanks. My voice came out quieter than I wanted. Grant nodded, but he was still watching me. You're welcome, Evan. Hearing my name in his voice felt strange. Too familiar for someone who had spent 4 years acting like I was barely there. I took a sip to give myself something to do. It was exactly how I used to order it. No ice. A lime wedge pressed against the side. I looked down at the drink, then back at him. They had lime. I asked. Before I could figure out what to say to that, the reunion coordinator called him again, louder this time. Grant exhaled and took 1 step backward. Don't disappear before I get back. I forced a smile. No promises. He looked like he wanted to answer, but the woman grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the ballroom. I stood alone near the entrance, holding a drink I hadn't ordered, watching the guy who used to ignore me glance back twice before the doors closed behind him. And that was when I realized the worst part wasn't seeing Grant again. It was the possibility that he had noticed me all along. The ballroom looked exactly like a place designed by people trying too hard to make adulthood feel impressive. White tablecloths, a rented photo backdrop, a banner with our graduation year printed in gold. I had been inside for less than 2 minutes when 3 people asked whether I was married. Not even a little, I told the third one. She laughed like I had made a joke. I had not. I found my assigned table near the dance floor and took the safest seat I could find, the one facing away from the entrance. It did not help. I knew the second Grant walked back into the room. I felt it before I looked. Then his hand appeared beside my shoulder, setting a small plate of food in front of me. You skipped the buffet. I glanced up. Were you monitoring me? You drove 6 hours and came straight here. He pulled out the chair beside mine. You should eat something. That sounds a lot like monitoring. I prefer noticing. The word landed harder than it should have. Grant sat down, close enough that his knee brushed mine under the table. I shifted slightly. He did not. Across from us, Melissa Carter leaned forward with a bright smile. She had been student council president in high school and somehow still looked like she was organizing everyone's lives. Evan, Chicago. That is exciting. What do you do there? User experience design. I do not know what that means. Mostly meetings where people argue about buttons. Grant laughed under his breath. You always hated group projects. I turned toward him. You remember that too? His smile faded just a little. I remember more than you think. Before I could respond, another classmate dropped into the empty chair beside Melissa. Holloway, I am shocked you remember anything about Evan. You barely talked to the quiet kids. The table laughed. I did too, because that was easier than letting anyone notice the way my chest tightened. Grant did not laugh. His jaw shifted, and he looked down at his drink. Yeah, he murmured. I know. The conversation moved on, but the air between us changed. I focused on the food Grant had brought me. Turkey sandwich. No mustard. Potato chips instead of the pasta salad. It was the exact kind of plate I would have made for myself. That could have been coincidence. It was a buffet. He had guessed. People guess things all the time. You still hate mustard? His voice was low enough that no one else heard. I stared at him. You cannot be serious. You used to scrape it off with a napkin. Once. Every Friday for a year. My face went warm. Why were you watching me eat lunch? Grant held my gaze. He looked like he had an answer, but not one he wanted to give at a crowded table. Maybe I was bored. That is not convincing. I did not say I was good at lying. For a second, neither of us moved. His knee was still pressed lightly against mine. I could have shifted away. I should have. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was. Melissa called Grant's name from across the table, asking about the class photo. He answered her, but his eyes remained on me for 1 second too long. Then he reached past my plate, his fingers brushing the back of my hand as he moved my drink away from the edge. Careful, he murmured. You always knock things over when you are nervous. My pulse stumbled. I am not nervous. Grant's mouth curved, slow and quiet. Sure. I pushed my chair back before he could see how badly that one word affected me. I need some air. His hand closed gently around my wrist. Not tight, just enough to stop me. The table conversation continued around us, loud and careless, while Grant looked up at me with an expression I could not read. Evan. His thumb shifted once against my skin. Can we talk somewhere quieter? Grant released my wrist the second I nodded. The absence of his hand felt worse than the touch itself. We slipped through a side door near the ballroom and ended up in a narrow hotel hallway lined with framed pictures of lakes nobody in Ohio had ever seen. The music dropped to a dull thump behind us. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Grant leaned against the wall, then changed his mind and stood straight again. Nervous. Grant Holloway was nervous around me. That alone was enough to make my thoughts stop working. You wanted to talk, I reminded him. He looked down at his hands. I owe you an apology. I let out a quiet breath. For the sandwich? For high school. There it was. The thing I had spent 10 years pretending did not matter. I crossed my arms, mostly so he would not see my fingers shake. You do not owe me anything. I do. Grant, we were barely friends. His eyes lifted fast. That was my fault. The hallway suddenly felt too small. Okay. I gave a short laugh that did not sound real. You ignored a quiet kid in high school. It happens. You do not need to make this some huge thing. It was a huge thing to me. That shut me up. Grant took one step closer, not enough to crowd me, just enough that I could see the tension in his face. I knew your class schedule. My stomach tightened. What? I knew you stayed late in the art room on Tuesdays. I knew you ate lunch behind the auditorium when the cafeteria got too loud. I knew you always carried 2 pens because one of them never worked. I stared at him. He rubbed the back of his neck and looked almost embarrassed. That sounds creepy when I say it out loud. A little. I know. A small smile passed between us, then disappeared. Why? I asked. The word came out softer than I wanted. Grant looked toward the ballroom doors, checking that no one had followed us. Then he faced me again. Because I noticed you. You had a strange way of showing it. His jaw tightened. I was 17. My dad came to every game. My friends made jokes about anything that did not fit what they thought a guy should be. I did not know how to deal with. He stopped. I waited. With what? Grant held my eyes. The silence stretched so long it started to hurt. Then the side door opened. A former teammate stepped into the hallway, spotted us standing alone, and grinned. There you are? Holloway. Are you finally apologizing for acting like Evan did not exist? He laughed at his own joke. I forced a smile. Grant did not. The teammate glanced between us, suddenly less amused. I was kidding. I know. Grant's voice stayed flat. Go back inside, Derek. Derek lifted both hands and disappeared through the door. The silence returned, heavier now. I looked at Grant. He was not wrong. Grant's expression changed. Fear, maybe. Or regret. I was not ignoring you because I did not notice you. His voice dropped. I was ignoring you because I noticed everything. For 1 second, I forgot how to breathe. Grant stood close enough that I could see the tiny crease between his eyebrows, the one that appeared whenever he was trying not to say too much. Everything. I repeated. His eyes dropped to my mouth, then snapped back up. That came out wrong. Did it? The hallway felt too quiet. Behind the ballroom doors, someone shouted over the music and a group laughed, but it sounded far away. Grant rubbed his palm against the side of his pants. I noticed when you cut your hair junior year. I noticed when you stopped bringing lunch because your parents were going through something. My chest tightened. I had never told anyone at school about that. How did you know? You started pretending you were not hungry. His voice softened. You were bad at pretending. I looked away before he could see what that did to me. You never said anything. I wanted to, but you did not. No. The answer came without an excuse. That made it harder to stay angry. I stared at one of the framed lake pictures, trying to get my thoughts under control. So what was the plan? Watch me from across the cafeteria and hope I figured it out. Grant let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh. There was no plan. I was scared. Of me. Of what it meant that I kept looking for you. I turned back. He was not smiling now. My pulse hit hard against my ribs. Grant. I know. He stepped closer, then stopped like he had reached an invisible line. I know this is 10 years too late. His hand lifted slightly between us, hesitated, then fell back to his side. That small movement was somehow worse than if he had touched me. Did you like me? I asked. The question came out before I could stop it. Grant went completely still. His eyes stayed on mine. 1 second. 2. 3. Evan, that is not an answer. I am trying to give you one. It should not be that hard. It was back then. His voice dropped. It still is. Something in my chest twisted. I should have walked away. Instead, I took 1 step closer. Now there was barely any space between us. Grant's breathing changed. So did mine. Why are you looking at me like that? I whispered. Like what? Like you are about to do something. His gaze lowered again. Slower this time. My stomach flipped. Grant raised his hand and brushed his thumb near my cheek. I froze. You had something, he murmured. His fingers lingered against my skin even though there was nothing there. We both knew it. For one impossible second, neither of us moved. His face tilted slightly toward mine. My heart started pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. Then the ballroom door swung open. Melissa stepped into the hallway, holding a clipboard. There you two are. Grant pulled his hand away like he had been burned. I stepped back too fast and nearly hit the wall. Melissa looked between us, then smiled slowly. Am I interrupting something? No, I answered. Grant said nothing. And somehow, his silence told me more than any confession could have. Melissa's smile stayed in place a second too long. No, I repeated, because apparently making it sound less convincing was my plan. Grant took half a step away from me and adjusted his sleeves, even though they were already fine. You need something? His voice had gone careful, controlled, nothing like the way he had sounded 30 seconds earlier. Melissa lifted the clipboard. Class photo. Everyone is waiting. Her eyes moved between us again. Although now I am curious what I interrupted. Nothing. This time Grant answered too quickly. The word hit harder than it should have. I told myself he was protecting his privacy. Protecting mine too, maybe. Still, it felt a lot like being 17 again. We followed Melissa back into the ballroom, and the noise swallowed us immediately. People were lining up in front of the gold backdrop, calling out old nicknames and arguing about height order. Grant got pulled toward the back row with the former athletes. I ended up near the side, exactly where I used to stand in every school picture. Evan Mercer? I turned and found Miles Bennett grinning at me. He looked different without the long hair he had in art class, but the smile was the same. Easy. Warm. Miles. Wow. He pulled me into a quick hug. You disappeared after graduation. Chicago happened. That sounds dramatic. Mostly expensive. He laughed and stayed beside me while the photographer tried to organize everyone. Miles asked about my job, my apartment, whether I still took pictures. The conversation felt simple. Safe. Then he leaned closer and lowered his voice. Can I admit something embarrassing? That depends. I almost asked you to prom. I blinked. No, you did not. I did. I chickened out. Why? Miles shrugged, smiling at the floor. You seemed hung up on someone else. My stomach tightened. Before I could respond, a hand settled on the back of the chair beside me. Grant had crossed the room without me noticing. They are ready for us, he murmured. His eyes were on Miles, not me. Miles glanced at Grant's hand, then at my face. Right. Class photo. As we moved into position, Miles touched my arm. We should catch up later. Maybe exchange numbers. Sure. The word barely left my mouth before Grant stepped away. His expression did not change, but something in his shoulders did. He took his place at the opposite end of the back row. During the photo, he never looked at the camera. He looked at me. Afterward, I tried to catch him near the bar, but Derek stopped him. Then 2 other former teammates joined them. Grant smiled when they spoke to him. Normal. Relaxed. Like the hallway had never happened. Like his thumb had not been against my cheek. I waited 5 minutes. Then 10. He did not come back. Of course he did not. Maybe that was his answer. Maybe nothing had been the truth. I grabbed my coat and slipped out through the lobby before anyone could stop me. The rain had started again, tapping against the hotel awning. I was halfway to my car when I saw someone standing beside it. Grant. No jacket. Hair damp. Hands shoved into his pockets. He looked up as I approached, breathing hard like he had run outside. You are leaving. Good observation. His jaw tightened. Are you going to see Miles? I stopped. Why do you care? Grant stared at me, rain gathering on his lashes. For once, he had nowhere to look but directly at me. Grant looked at me for so long that the rain became the only sound between us. Because I did not want you to leave with him. My grip tightened around my car keys. That still does not answer why. He dragged a hand through his wet hair, frustration flashing across his face. You really need me to say it? After 10 years of you saying nothing? Yeah, I do. Grant glanced toward the hotel entrance. A few people stood beneath the awning, laughing and waiting for rides. One of them looked our way. His shoulders tensed immediately. I noticed. Of course I did. There, I muttered. That is the problem. His eyes snapped back to mine. What is? You get close when nobody is watching. Then someone opens a door, and suddenly it was nothing. Evan. Melissa asked if she interrupted us, and you acted like the idea was ridiculous. I panicked. You always panic. The words came out sharper than I intended. Grant flinched anyway. For a second, guilt hit me. Then I remembered the hallway. His hand against my face. His silence after. I unlocked my car. I should go. Grant reached past me and placed his palm against the driver's door before I could open it. Not trapping me, just stopping the moment from ending. I watched Miles touch your arm, and I hated it. My hand froze on the handle. Grant's breathing was uneven now. I hated how easy it looked for him. I hated that he asked for your number like it was nothing. And I hated that you smiled at him. He was being friendly. I know. Then why are you acting like this? Because I am jealous. The answer landed between us with nowhere to hide. I turned slowly. Grant looked almost angry, but not at me. At himself. I do not know how to do this right, he continued. I never did. But when I saw you walking out, all I could think was that I had already let you leave once. My chest tightened so hard it hurt. You did not let me leave. You ignored me until leaving was easy. It was not easy for me. A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. You seemed fine. I was not. Grant pulled his wallet from his back pocket. His fingers shook slightly as he opened it and removed a folded piece of paper, worn soft at the edges. He held it out. It took me a second to recognize the faded print. A ticket from our senior art showcase. My name was still visible near the bottom, listed beside the photography exhibit. Why do you have this? Grant looked down at it. Because I went. I never saw you there. I stood in the back. His thumb moved over the crease. You had that photograph of the empty football field after a storm. Everyone else walked past it. I stayed for almost 20 minutes. I remembered that picture. I also remembered watching the entrance all night, hoping he might appear. You left before I could see you. I know. His voice dropped. I was scared someone would notice I was only there for you. My throat went dry. Grant stepped closer, rain darkening his shirt across the shoulders. What happened in that hallway was not nothing. I was not joking, and I did not pull away because I did not want it. His eyes held mine. No smile. No escape route. I pulled away because Melissa walked in, and for half a second I became that scared 17-year-old again. I looked at the old ticket in his hand. 10 years of telling myself I had imagined every glance suddenly felt less certain. Why come tonight? Grant folded the ticket carefully and placed it back in his wallet. Because I saw your name on the guest list. He swallowed. And I knew I could not let you disappear again without telling you the truth. My pulse started pounding. Which truth? Grant moved close enough that our hands nearly touched beside the car door. I came here because I was waiting for you. For a second, I just stood there with the rain hitting the pavement around us and Grant's words hanging between us. I had imagined hearing something like that from him more times than I wanted to admit. Back then, I thought it would fix everything. Now it only made everything messier. Waiting for me is not the same as being ready for me, I said. Grant's face changed. Not anger. More like I had hit something he was already afraid of. I know. Do you? I folded my arms, trying to keep my voice steady. Because 10 minutes ago, someone looked at us, and you stepped away. His eyes dropped toward the parking lot. I told you why. You told me you panicked. That is the truth. And what happens tomorrow? I pushed. What happens when this is not a reunion parking lot, and somebody you actually care about sees us? Grant looked toward the hotel again. Through the glass doors, Derek and 2 other former teammates were standing near the lobby bar. One of them glanced outside. Grant moved closer to the car without thinking, partly hidden from view. My chest sank. There it was. The answer I had been waiting for. Right, I murmured. Evan, no. You just did it again. He followed my gaze and realized what he had done. His shoulders dropped. I was not hiding from them. Then what were you doing? Trying to have one conversation without half our graduating class watching. That sounds reasonable when you say it like that. I opened the driver's door. It still feels exactly the same. Grant's hand lifted, then stopped before touching me. I am not ashamed of you. Maybe not of me. I looked at him. But you are still scared of what wanting me says about you. He did not answer. He did not have to. The silence hurt more than anything else he had admitted. I cannot be your test run, I told him. I cannot go back to reading every look and every touch, wondering whether you mean it or whether you are going to regret it the second someone notices. I do mean it. That is not the same as being able to live with it. Grant stepped back like the words had physically pushed him. Rain slid down the side of his face. For a moment, he looked younger. Not the confident man everyone had been crowding around inside. Just the scared boy from the hallway. I have not told my family, he admitted quietly. Most of my friends do not know. I barely started saying it to myself without feeling like I had done something wrong. My anger softened, but it did not disappear. I am sorry. Do not be. He shook his head. You are right. That was not what I expected. Somehow it felt worse. Grant stared down at his hands. Maybe I should not have come after you. My stomach dropped. What? Maybe telling you tonight was selfish. He gave a short, humorless laugh. I saw your name on that list and convinced myself I could finally do this. Then I almost kissed you in a hotel hallway and froze the second someone walked in. His eyes met mine again. You deserve someone who does not have to learn how to stand beside you. I wanted to argue. I wanted him to take it back. Instead, I heard myself say, maybe I do. Grant nodded once. The movement was small, but it felt final. He stepped away from my car. Drive safe, Evan. He turned toward the hotel before I could answer. I watched him walk through the rain, shoulders tight, never looking back. My hand stayed on the open car door. I had been the one asking him not to pull away. So why did it feel like I had just watched him give up? My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Miles lit the screen. Still want to catch up? I stared at it for a long time. Then another notification appeared. Grant had sent me a photo. It was the old art show ticket beside a message that read, I was not waiting for you because I felt guilty. I was waiting because I never stopped wondering what would have happened if I had stayed. I read Grant's message 3 times. Then I closed my car door. Miles could wait. The drive home could wait. I was done pretending I did not know what I wanted. By the time I got back inside, my shirt was damp at the shoulders and my heart was beating too fast. The ballroom had grown louder. People were dancing now, laughing like nobody had spent the last 10 years becoming someone else. I found Grant near the back wall, alone, staring at his phone. He looked up when I stopped in front of him. Surprise crossed his face first. Then caution. You came back. You keep saying that like you expected me not to. Grant slipped his phone into his pocket. I did not know what to expect. Neither did I. A couple brushed past us, forcing me closer. Grant stepped aside to give me room. That careful distance irritated me more than it should have. Stop doing that. His brows pulled together. Doing what? Acting like you have to protect me from standing next to you. He went still. The music shifted to something slower, but neither of us looked toward the dance floor. Evan, I am trying not to make this harder. It is already hard. My voice came out lower than I intended. You waited 10 years to tell me you noticed me. Then the second I asked what that means now, you decided I deserve someone better and walked away. Grant's jaw tightened. Because you do. That is not your decision. He looked at me then. Really looked. What do you want me to say? The truth. I have been telling you the truth. No. You have been giving me pieces of it. I stepped closer. You were jealous. You kept the ticket. You almost kissed me. Then you told me to drive safe, like we were done. His breathing changed. I thought that was what you wanted. I wanted you to stop hiding behind what you think is best for me. Silence. Grant glanced down at our hands, hanging only inches apart. I am scared, he admitted. No speech. No excuse. Just the words. I know. I do not know what happens after tonight. Neither do I. His eyes lifted. And that does not bother you? It terrifies me. I swallowed. But I am more tired of wondering. Grant's hand moved slightly, then stopped. Evan, do not ask permission to feel something. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I closed the space between our hands and hooked my little finger around his. It was barely a touch. Still, his entire expression softened. I liked you, he said quietly. Back then. My chest tightened. And now? His fingers turned beneath mine until our palms met. Now I do not want to watch you leave with someone else. That is jealousy. I know. It is not the same as choosing me. Grant looked toward the crowded room. Derek was laughing near the bar. Melissa was talking to the photographer. People who had known us before either of us knew ourselves. Grant's thumb brushed once across my knuckles. Then he stepped beside me instead of away. Okay. His voice steadied. Then let me choose. He led me toward the edge of the dance floor, not hidden behind a hallway door or a parked car. Halfway there, someone called his name. Grant did not let go. He looked at me and asked, "Dance with me?" I searched his face for panic. It was there. But he stayed. You hate dancing. I hated a lot of things in high school because I was scared. His hand tightened gently around mine. I am trying something different. Grant was terrible at dancing. I learned that within the first 10 seconds. He stepped on my shoe, muttered an apology, then nearly turned us into another couple. You were right, he murmured. I hate this. I laughed before I could stop myself. You are doing great. You are a terrible liar. His hand rested carefully at my side, like he was still afraid one wrong move would send me walking away again. I placed my free hand on his shoulder. Stop thinking so much. That has never worked for me. Try. Grant looked at me. The room kept moving around us, but his attention did not. For once, he was not checking who might be watching. Derek called something from near the bar. Melissa smiled in our direction. Grant's fingers tightened around mine, and he stayed exactly where he was. That mattered more than anything he could have said. When the song ended, neither of us moved right away. His hand remained in mine. No panic. No quick excuse. Just the two of us standing at the edge of the dance floor while everyone else moved around us. You hungry? Grant asked. You already fed me. You ate half a sandwich. You were monitoring me again. His mouth curved. Noticing. We left the reunion together. Not through the side hallway. Not one at a time. Through the main lobby. Past the people who had known us when we were too scared to know ourselves. Grant held the door open, and when I stepped beside him, his hand found mine again. This time, it did not feel accidental. We walked 3 blocks to the diner near our old high school. The place still had cracked red booths and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting there since graduation. We took the booth by the window. Grant sat across from me at first, then stared at the empty space beside me. What? I asked. Nothing. You were doing the thing. What thing? Thinking too much. He shook his head, slid out of his seat, and moved into the booth beside me. Our shoulders touched. Neither of us moved away. Better? I asked. Yeah. The waitress brought coffee for him and ginger ale for me. No ice. Grant noticed and smiled into his cup. We talked until the reunion ended and the parking lot across the street emptied. Not about forever. Not about labels. Just real things. Work. Family. Chicago. The fact that Grant had never been farther west than Indiana. The things we had missed. The things we still had time to learn. When the check arrived, he reached for it. I invited you. You invited me to dance. Then let me invite you to breakfast. I glanced at the clock above the counter. It was almost 2 in the morning. This is technically breakfast. Tomorrow morning, he clarified. A real date. My chest tightened, but this time it did not feel like fear. You know I live 6 hours away. I know. You have no idea how this works. Also true. Grant turned toward me, one arm resting along the back of the booth. I have been waiting 10 years. I can start slow. I studied his face, looking for the part of him that might pull back. He looked nervous, still scared, but he was there. Coffee, I agreed. You are driving to Chicago next weekend. That is a long way for coffee. You wanted a chance. I did. Then earn it. His smile came slowly. Deal. Outside, the rain had stopped. We stood beside my car, neither of us ready to leave. Grant reached for my hand again. This time, I threaded my fingers through his. He looked down at them, then back at me. I should have done this a long time ago. Probably. You could make this easier. You made me wait 10 years. Fair. He walked me to the driver's door, but did not let go until I had to reach for the handle. Even then, his thumb brushed once across my knuckles before our hands separated. The guy who used to look away was finally looking right at me. And this time, neither of us pretended it meant nothing.